it was my understanding that the theater didn't have a formal written policy to not allow Black folks in, but they weaponized the Theaters Act against her, because I remember reading as well that she had offered to pay the difference. And
Yes,
also
she did.
it was never about the money. It was
No,
about putting her in her place
right.
in many ways.
And really, the legal system fails as often as not. The judges could have interpreted what happened as a theater refusing to collect the proper fee rather than her not paying. It was they who really were in violation of that neutral act. But the law is so often administered by overwhelmingly white people with a whole legacy and history of racism fails to see. The law fails to see the injustice that is being done, particularly in the face of neutral rules.
And then the recourse for those of us who, may not have an understanding of how those laws would work, or the legal representation, are often left really with limited recourses or remedies for what's happened. And so the reason I asked you the question about the regulations and laws in particular is, in my research, I've found that in current times, what folks are doing as it relates to businesses and in sort of service delivery areas, in consumer spaces, is oftentimes, if there's an allegation of racial profiling, or if there's an allegation of shoplifting, one of the things, and if people argue back, they get threatened with trespass and the use of the Trespass Act. And so it's something that I've thought about very deeply, because there are limited ways for people to push back or fight back against being trespassed off of property, because it is the business owner or the landlord, whoever owns that property, is allowed to determine who's on their property and the type of behavior that they accept. But I find it curious and problematic that when individuals speak back, and I can speak to my own experience. I've been in situations where I've asked, I won't obviously name the business, but I've gone in and I've been followed, and I've asked them questions about why I'm being followed and why I'm being consumer racial profiled, and whether it's a plainclothes security guard, it's a staff person, or a uniformed security guard. The threat is, we're going to physically remove you, and we're going to trespass you. And immediately, as a consumer or the person on that space, I leave. And so I'm curious as to your thoughts around just how can we deal with, the use of these laws, as you're saying. They don't always, and the people who the adjudicators don't always see those connections of how those neutral laws or regulations are used against individual communities. What can we do to kind of address that outside of a court system? Can we do anything?
Well, I think the first thing is that we need to have more research. We need to be able to show that these so-called neutral policies, such as a shop owner being able to determine who comes in and who doesn't, we need to be able to demonstrate that those policies are having a significant detrimental impact on racialized communities. And the data helps, because we still live in a society in which white people hold most of the power, and they don't experience this. And so to them, it's all foreign information. And they think, are you sure? Maybe you're overreacting, give me some evidence that this is a policy with a racially detrimental impact. So that takes time. It takes people who will do the research. It sometimes takes research funding, but we need way more of it in order to, particularly to burst the bubble of a Canadian cultural notion that somehow we don't have racism in Canada. That's a mistaken belief that we've had with us for centuries.